Welcome to the video Spring Boot CRUD tutorial with IntelliJ IDEA. I am Nam Haming from codejava.net. In this video, you will learn how to develop a Java web application based on Spring Framework, in which you will learn how to code the user module with CRUD operations such as create, retrieve, update, and delete. And the technologies will be used are Spring Boot Web for the web layer, Spring Data JPA and Hibernate Framework for the data access layer, MySQL database, Thymeleaf template engine, HTML5 and Bootstrap for responsive user interface, JUnit 5 and AssertJ for unit testing. And to follow this video, I recommend you to install these software programs on your computer: Java Development Kit, OpenJDK, IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate, MySQL Community Server, and MySQL Workbench. Now let's look at the user interface of the web application, which you will learn how to develop through this video. This is the home page displaying the welcome message and with a link manage users. And this is the user's listing page that displays the user information in table format like this. You see the columns ID, email, first name, last name, enable status, and on this page we can add new user, edit or delete an existing user. And this is the add new user form that lets us to enter the details of a user such as email, first name, last name, password, enable status, and two buttons, save and cancel. And this is the edit user form that lets us to update the details of an existing user. And this is a successful message that gets displayed after a new user has been added or an existing user has been updated. And also after a user has been deleted like this. And I draw this class diagram to help you understand the code which we are going to write. In the data access layer, we need to code the user entity class that represents user information such as ID, email, first name, last name, and enable. And this class maps to the corresponding table in the database, the users table. And then we need to code the user repository interface in order to use Spring Data API. This interface must extend the CRUD repository interface provided by Spring Data API because this interface defines the standard methods for CRUD operations like this, you see. And for unit testing, we need to code the user repository test class here for testing CRUD operations to ensure that the code in the data access layer is working properly. And in the service layer, we need to code the user service class that implements these business methods, you see, for CRUD operations. And in the controller layer, we need to code the main controller class, which is a Spring MVC controller for handling the request to the home page. And for the user module, we need to code the user controller class, which is also a Spring MVC controller class for handling the request from the two view pages, user list and user form. And we need to implement these handler methods. And here are the steps which we need to follow. Firstly, we need to create and set up a Spring Boot project, and then code the home page, and then code the user entity class and user repository interface, and then code unit test for the data access layer, and then code the user listing page, and then code the add user function, and then code the update user function, and finally code the delete user function. The first step is create and set up a Spring Boot project. In this step, we need to declare some dependencies for Spring Web, Spring Data JPA, Thymeleaf, MySQL, JDBC driver, Spring Boot DevTools for automatic reload changes, WebJAS for bootstraps, and then we need to create a new database schema and configure Datasource in the application properties file. Open IntelliJ IDEA. As you can see, I'm using IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate Edition version 2021.1 here, and it is running on JDK version 11 here. Now let's create a new project. Click New Project button, and for creating a new Spring Boot project, select Spring Initializer here, and enter the project name as My Web App. You see, by default, the project type is Maven, language is Java, and change the group to my company artifact ID, my web app, and change the package name to just com.mycompany, and project SDK. The DK version is 15 here, and Java version for this project is 11. Choose Java 11 as the latest long-term support version of Java, and the default packaging type is jar, and click next. And here we need to select some dependencies for, you see, for Spring Boot Dev Tools and Spring Web and Thymeleaf for template engine. And for database, choose Spring Data JPA and MySQL driver for MySQL JDBC driver. Alright, so we have Spring Boot Dev Tools, Spring Web, Thymeleaf, Spring Data JPA, and MySQL JDBC driver, and click Finish. Here we go, the project is being created. And you see this is a project structure. Under the SRC directory, you can see main Java here, resources here, and you can see this is the main class that we run the Spring Boot application here with the annotation Spring Boot application here. You see, and this is a Spring application configuration file, application.properties here, and then we need to configure data source in this file, and this is a Maven project file pom.xml here. You can see the dependency declaration for Spring Boot Starter, Data JPA, Thymeleaf, Web, DevTools, Starter Test. Spring Boot Starter Test is included by default. And in the external library section, here you can see a lot of jar files downloaded by Maven for the project here. You see the jar files for Spring, for JUnit here, for Spring Boot here. You see lots of jar files. Next, I will show you how to create a new database schema right inside IntelliJ IDEA using the database tool here. Before that, ensure that MySQL database server is running. So open the task manager service and look for the service name MySQL 8.0 here for MySQL 8.0, and you can see the status is running. That means MySQL server is running. And in the database tool here in IntelliJ IDEA, click the plus button to create a new data source for MySQL here. Enter the name is user db at localhost, and default port number 3306, host localhost, and username root and password. And the database is empty now, so click test connection. We need to download the driver files. Okay, just a moment. And it is testing connection to MySQL database server. You see succeeded here. That means it has connected successfully to MySQL database server. And click OK. That's it, and we have a new database connection right here. And you can see the schemas in the server here. You see, now we need to create a new schema for our application. So you can right click here, new schema here. Enter the schema name is user DB, and the collection name is UTF-8MB4 underscore 0 underscore CI, and click OK. And you see we got a new schema created here, user DB. Here you see, and there are no tables now. And click here to choose the default schema is user DB here. And then we need to configure data source properties in the application properties file here. So the first property is for JDBC URL, which the name is spring.datasource.url here. JDBC :MySQL / localhost port number 3306, and the schema name is userdb, which has been created previously. And the next property is for the username. Spring datasource.username is root, and the next one is password. Spring datasource password. And then for a Spring Boot project using Spring Data JPA, we should use this property spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl auto equal update. So Hibernate, we create the tables in the database, update the tables in the database if necessary, according to the entity classes. So choose a value update for this property. And to display the SQL statements in the console view, we need to specify this property spring.jpa.properties, and the property is hibernate.show underscore SQL equal true. So this will show SQL statements in the console view, so we can understand what is going on in the database. Alright, this is a configuration for the data source. And next we are going to code the home page for the application. So we need to code the main controller class, then code the index HTML file, and run the application for the first time. And I will show you how to configure IntelliJ IDEA in order to use DevTools for automatic reload changes, and how to use Bootstrap. Alright, come back to the project, and let's create a new class here in this package, new Java class, main controller. This is the main controller of the application, and we need to use the annotation controller because this is a Spring MVC controller. Let me increase the font size of the editor here, 18. Okay. And in this controller we have the first handler method, and we need to use the red mapping annotation, which URL is empty, to handle the request for the home page of the application or the context part of the application. Public string show home page. And in this handler method, we simply is a logical view name to the view, which is index. Note that the URL mapping here must be empty for the home page, the context part of the application. And then we need to create the corresponding HTML file in the templates directory here. Right click, new HTML file here. The name is index, and by default it will create HTML5 index, and change the title to welcome to my application. And in this home page, for now we have a heading 1, welcome to my application. That's it for the code of the home page. Very simple, right? Now we can run this Spring Boot application for the first time. You see in the main class here, in the main method here, you can click the play button, green play button here to run the project, run my web application here. And click allow access. And you see our Spring Boot application has started successfully here. You see this is some logging message in the console view. You can see Tomcat started on port number 8080 with the context path empty here, and you can see live the root server is running. That means we are using Spring Boot DevTools. Alright, and now we can access our Spring Boot web application in a web browser such as Chrome browser. So open Chrome browser here and type the URL is http localhost port number 8080. Enter. And you see the home page of the application appears with the heading "Welcome to my application" with the page title here. Perfect, right? That means our Spring Boot application is up and running perfectly for the first time. Now let's make some changes in the index HTML file here. Update the heading "Welcome to my application" and put a new hyperlink here. Managed users with href attributes is /users. Alright, and refresh the home page. And you see nothing happens. We don't see the updated code because the Spring Boot application is running as a standalone jar file. So that means we need to restart the application to see the changes take effect. So stop and start again. Start the application again here. Now refresh the home page and we see the updated code for the home page here with a hyperlink here. Now let me make the hyperlink larger here using heading 2 here. Now refresh and you see it doesn't get updated. So each time I make changes to the code, I need to restart the application, and that process takes a lot of time. So Spring Boot provides the dependency, the Spring Boot DevTools here that allows automatic reload of changes and restart the application. Here you see we use the dependency Spring Boot DevTools here, but somehow it doesn't work right away with IntelliJ IDEA. So we need to do some extra configurations in IntelliJ IDEA to make the DevTools automatic reload working. So press the Shift key twice and type resist G here, resist G, and search for the property type the property compiler dot automake, and you see we need to enable the property compiler automake allow when app running. Check here and click close. And then we need to open the settings here, build execution deployment, compiler and check the option build project automatically here and click OK. And we also need to configure the run settings here. Open the main class here, click here and modify run configuration here, and here on update action choose update classes and resources, and on frame deactivation choose update classes and resources and click OK. And then we need to restart the application, stop and start again. And you can see the thread name is now restarted main. That means Spring Boot DevTools is running. Okay, and now refresh the home page here. You see, now I will make some changes to the index page here. For example, I will center the text here in a deep section like this. Align equal center. Now refresh, and you see it gets updated immediately here. Perfect, right? So we can make changes to the code and see the update immediately in the web browser. And similarly, we can change Java code here. For example, I print something here. System.out.println main controller, and refresh the home page and see what is printed in the console view here. Refresh again, and you see it prints main controller in the console here. That means Java code also gets updated. And next, I will show you how to use Bootstrap for the project. Delete this system.println statement and open the pom.xml file. We need to declare some additional dependencies in order to use Bootstrap from jar file. So here, add a new dependency with the group ID is webjars, and you can see it automatically suggests the Bootstrap artifact ID with the version here. And then we also need another dependency for the discovery of Bootstrap here, group ID or .webjars, and the artifact ID is webjars locator core here, and we don't need to specify the version for webjars, so delete. Alright, so this is the dependency configuration for using Bootstrap in terms of the jar files. And then we need to update the index HTML page here to use Bootstrap. So we declare a link element with route is style sheet here, and type is text CSS, and the location, the href attribute, we should use Thymeleaf expression. We need to declare an XML namespace, HTML namespace, XML namespace with the prefix is th, http thymeleaf.org. And then for the link element here, we use the Thymeleaf expression for sref attribute th:/sref, and we use this expression for the URL of the Bootstrap CSS file under /webjas bootstrap css bootstrap.min.css. So we need to use this Thymeleaf expression for the sref attribute, so it will generate the URL correctly in the project external libraries, and you can see the dependency for WebJS. If you don't see the WebJS here, you need to update Maven. So open Maven here, click the refresh button here to reload all Maven projects, reload the changes in the pom.xml file. And now you see we have the jar files for WebJS and Bootstrap here. Under Bootstrap, you can see the actual CSS files for Bootstrap here. You see bootstrap.min.css here. Bootstrap.min.css. Here you see. Makes sense. And then we update the homepage here to use Bootstrap, the code here to use Bootstrap. For this deep section, we use the class container fruit. You can see IntelliJ IDEA also suggests code completion for Bootstrap CSS classes. Very convenient, right? And text center to center the text here. And for the hyperlink for managed users here, we specify the class heading 2 instead of using heading 2 like this. And also we use Thymeleaf expression for the sref attribute like this, so it will generate the correct URL. Alright, and now we can refresh the home page to see the changes. Let me see, view page source, and click the link to Bootstrap min CSS here, and we got the error file not found. We need to restart the application. Run here, stop and start again. So after adding Bootstrap from jar files, we need to restart the application for the changes to take effect. Now we refresh the home page, and you see the user interface gets updated with Bootstrap here. Managed users link. We got error page because we haven't implemented the handler method for this URL yet. And view page source, click the link for Bootstrap here. You can see the code for Bootstrap CSS code here. That means we have successfully configured and used Bootstrap for our project. And next, you will learn how to code data access layer for the user module. In details, we need to code user entity class that maps to the user table in the database, and then code the user repository interface to use APIs of Spring Data JPA, and then run the application to let Hibernate framework create the table. So we need to code the user entity class with these fields, and then code the user repository interface that extends the CRUD repository interface like this. You see. Alright, come back to IntelliJ IDEA, and let's create a new Java class here. New Java class. We need to create a subpackage, new package here. The subpackage is com.mycompany.user for the user module, and let's create a new Java class here. user. And this is an entity class, so we need to use some JPA annotations to indicate that this Java class will map with a table in the database. So we need to use the entity annotation and use the table annotation to specify the mapping table is users. And then we declare the fields in this entity class. The first one is ID that maps to the primary column in the users table. Second one is email and password and first name, and the last field is last name. And for the ID field, we need to use the annotation ID here to indicate that this field maps to the primary column in the table. And we need to use the generated value annotation with the strategy type is generation type identity here. That means the values of the ID column will be generated automatically by the database. And for the field email, we can use the column annotation to specify some additional properties such as the nullable to false, meaning that the value of email is required, and unique equal to, meaning that email is unique in the table users. And similarly, we specify the column annotation for the password field with the length is 15 characters maximum. We also specify the length attribute for the column for the field email. Maximum length is 45 characters. And the same for password nullable false. The same for first name and last name. The length of first name maximum length is 45 characters. And we can also specify the column name. By default, the mapping column name will be the field name here, but we can also specify the name if we want, like this, first underscore name. And we apply the similar for the last name field here with the mapping column name is last underscore name. And then we need to generate getter and setter methods for these fields. So right click refactor, right click here, refactor, encapsulate fields here, and choose other fields, ID, email, password, first name and last name, and click refactor. Okay, now we got the getters and setters for the fields of the entity class. So it is quite simple, right? And then we need to create a new Java interface for the user repository, new Java class, and choose the type is interface. The name of the class is user repository here. And we should have this interface instance. The super interface is CRUD repository provided by Spring Data JPA here. With the type of the entity is user class and the type of the ID field is integer. Because in the user entity class we use the type integer for the ID field here. Alright, and you can click on the interface CRUD repository here to view its code. Accept and you can see this interface defines some methods: save all, file by ID, exist by ID, file O by ID, count, delete by ID, delete all by ID, and so on. And also this interface extends the Xeric repository interface here. And at runtime, Spring Data JPA, we generate the code for the implementation of these methods defined in the repository interface. So we just in our application code, we just declare the interface like this to use Spring Data JPA. Make sense? Now let's check the console view here. Maximize. Scroll down to the end, and let me check MySQL Workbench here. You see in MySQL Workbench, I connected to the localhost and refreshed all here. And you see we have a new table got created here, users, with the columns ID, email, first name, last name, and password, exactly the mapping information we specified in the entity class here: ID, email, password, first name, and last name. Because we used Spring Boot Dev tool, so when we make changes to the code, the application restarted, and when the application restarted, Hibernate create the tables, and you can see the SQL statements here. Create table users here with the columns ID, email, first name, last name, and alter the table for the index, for the content of unique email, and for the primary key here. So we don't have to run the application. Now let me check the table structure here. Right click on the table, and you can see the structure of the users table here. Primary column ID here, not null. All the columns are not null, and the column email is unique. Here you see, and the maximum length of the text columns 45 characters here, you see. And we can also check in the database tool right inside IDE here. Expand the user DB schema here, or double click it to open. No, we need to connect again, refresh. Okay, and you can see the users table here. So when using IntelliJ IDEA, we don't need to use MySQL Workbench, as the database tool here is very powerful. We can do almost everything with database right inside the IDE. Next, you will learn how to write some unit tests for the data access layer of the user module. In details, we need to use Spring Data JPA test, and then we write some unit tests for testing CRUD operations on users, such as create, retrieve, update, and delete. And we run the test against a real database instead of the default in-memory database. And it is strongly recommended to write unit tests in order to follow TDD, test-driven development methodology. So we are going to code the user repository test class for testing CRUD operations on users, such as add new, list or update, get and delete, like this, you see. Alright, come back to IntelliJ IDEA, and you can see in the project we have the test source directory here, and you can see by default when we create the project, this test class will generated automatically, but we don't need, so just delete this class, delete. Okay, and we create a new test class, new Java class, user repository test. Okay, And in order to use Spring Data JPA test, we need to use this annotation, Data JPA test for the test class. And in order to run the test against the real database, we need to use this annotation, auto configure test database here, replace equal none, meaning that the test will be executed against the real database instead of the default in-memory database. And we want to keep the data committed to the database, so we need to use this annotation rollback false like this. And then in this test class, we need to have a reference AutoWire to the user repository interface, user repository here, a report. And the first test method using the test annotation, public void test add new, for testing adding a new user into the database. So here we create a new user object, user equal new user, and set the values for the fields of this user. Set email, for example, ravi.kumar.@gmail.com. User set password ravi123 456, and set first name Ravi, set last name Kumar. And then we call the repo save method to persist this user object into the database. And you can see this save method is defined in the CRUD repository interface. You see no implementation code because at runtime Spring Data JPA we generate the code. Alright, and then this save method returns new instance of the newly persisted user object. So we assign the return object to a new variable here, saved user. And to assert this test method, we can use AssertJ for Fluent testing API assertions. Spring Boot includes AssertJ library by default. Assert that here. Assert that the saved user object is not null. Is not null here. And we also assert that assertions assert that the saved user object get ID is greater than 0. Alright, and now we can run this test method for persisting a new user object into the database. You can click the play button here to run. Alright, the test is running. And you can see it has been executed successfully. The test has passed successfully. And you see in the console it executed the SQL statement to insert a new row into the users table here. You see. Now we can check in the database tool here, database. You can right click on the users here and click edit data here. And you can see we have a new row got inserted into this table. Email Ravi Kumar, first name Ravi, last name Kumar, and password here, ID1. Perfect, right? And let me modify the test code to persist another user into the database. Here, change the email. Alex Stevenson. Password and first name and last name, Alex Stevenson. Okay, and run this test method again here. Run. Alright, you see the test has passed successfully, and in the console you can see it prints the SQL statement here to insert a new row into the user table, and we can check in the database here. Here, users here, and you can click the refresh button here, and we got the second row inserted here for the user Alex Stevenson here. And next, let's code the second test method for listing all users in the database. The second test method here, test public void test list all, and here we call a repo file method here, and you can see the file method defined in the CRUD repository interface, and it returns an iterable collection here. And at runtime Spring Data JPA, we generate the implementation code for this method. So you see we don't have to write any SQL statement, just use a method provided by Spring Data JPA. And we assign the return value of this method call to a new local variable here, users. And to assert this test method, we can call assertions here. Assert that the user's iterable here has size greater than 0. And if the test passed, we iterate for each user object in the iterable here. Sorry, users for each here, and we print out the user object. So in the user entity class, we need to override the toString method. Override the toString method. Refactor generate toString here, and we choose all fields in the toString method like this. Alright, now we run the second test method here, test list all. Perfect, the test has passed successfully, and you can see in the console it printed the SQL statement for select user from the user table here, and you can see it prints the details of each user here with ID, email, password, first name and last name here. That means the test is successfully implemented. And next, let's write the third test method for updating a user. The next test method, public void test update. Now in the users table, we have two rows here. Now I want to write the test for updating the first user, Ravi Kumar here. I want to update the password here. Now, firstly, we need to get user object by ID. So we can call the repo method file by ID here, and we declare an integer variable for user ID equal 1, user ID. And you can see in the interface CRUD repository here, the file by ID method returns an optional type user here. So we need to assign the return value. optional here, optional user. And to get the user object from this optional result, we need to write the code like this. This optional user get. So after getting the user object, we need to update the password here. Password hello 2000, for example, and then we call the method repo save to update the change into the database for the user object here. And to assert this test method, we can get the user back like this: user updated user equal repo file by id user id, and then we need to call the get method here, get, and then we can assert this test method like this: assertions assert that updated user get password is equal to the new value, which is hello 2000, something like this. And now we can run this test method for testing update a user. Click here to run. Alright, you see the test has passed, and in the console you can see it prints the SQL statement, the select statement first to get a user by ID. Here you can see. Here you can see where user ID equal to the value here, and then the update statement update user set email, first name, last name, password, where ID here. Now we can check in the users table here. Refresh, and you can see the value of password updated for the user ID 1 here. And the next test method is for receiving a user by ID. Test public void test get. So the code will be similar to the test update method here. Here I want to get the user with ID 2 from the database ID 2. And here we assert that the user object is not null. Or we can assert like this: assert that assertion assert that optional user is present here. And if a user object is present in the result, we can print out the details of the user object here, optional user get, like this. Now we'll run this test get method. Alright, successful. And you can see the SQL statement for selecting a user by ID here, and it prints the details of the user ID 2 for the user Alex Stevenson here. Perfect, right? And the last test method for the data access layer of the user module is for testing and delete user by ID. Public void test delete. Now I want to delete the user with ID 2, integer user ID 2 here, and then we can call the method of the repository delete by ID here, and passing user ID. And again, you can see in the interface the delete by ID method here, no implementation. And Spring Data JPA, we generate the implementation code at runtime. Now we can assert this test method by trying to retrieve user object by ID from the database, and then we assert that the option user variable here is not present here because the user should be deleted after this statement call. Now run this test. Successful, you can see it executed the delete statement to remove a row from the users table here, and we can check in the users here, users table here, refresh, and you see the user with ID 2 has been removed from the table. And next, you will learn how to code the user's listing page. So from the home page, we can click the manage users hyperlink to view the user's listing page. That looks like this. You see, the user information is displayed in table format with the columns ID, email, first name, last name, and enabled here. So in Java code, we need to code a new service class in the service layer, user service, and element the business method list all. And in the controller layer, we need to code the user controller class and element the handler method show user list. And then we need to update the users, code the user's listing page and update the home page. Come back to IntelliJ IDEA. And now let's create a new Java class under the com.mycompany.user package here for the user module. Create a new Java class, user service. This here business class for the service layer, and we need to use the annotation service. So Spring Framework will be able to detect this class and create an instance of this service class. Now in this user service class, we need to have a reference to the user repository here, a report. And the first business method is for listing all users in the database. Public list user, list all. And here we return a repo file method. You can see the file method defined in the CRUD repository interface returns an iterable object. So we need to cast the return type to list here like this. And then in the controller layer, we need to create a new controller class for the user module, user controller. And we need to use the annotation controller. And in this controller, we need to use a reference, an instance of user service, and code the handler method for handling the request to view the user listing page. Here in the home page, we have the link manage user with this URL /users. Sorry, so I copy. And the first handler method get mapping for this URL. You see /users public string show user list. And in this handler method, we need to access the Spring MVC model object here, model, and we return the logical view name users. And here we call service list all. and assign the return value to a list users here, users, and change the variable here to list users, and we put this list users onto the model attribute here with name and value. Name is list users and value is a list user object. So in the view we can access this list collection to display the user information. All right, makes sense. And then in the view layer we need to code the corresponding view file corresponding to the logical view name here, users. So in the resource templates directory here, we create a new HTML file here with the name users. All right, and we can copy some existing code in the home page. Copy, paste here, and change the title to manage users. Manage users, and for this page, you see we use the Bootstrap CSS class container fluid for responsive page, and text center for center the text, and the heading of the page is manage users, and we put this heading into a separate div section and use the heading 2 instead of heading 1, heading 2, and another div section for the users listing, which is a table. So we use a table element here, table head with header columns ID and email and first name, last name, and an empty header for the action hyperlinks. All right, now when we can start the application. So open the main class here. Click here to run. Alright, the application has started successfully without any issues. And now we can access the application in Chrome browser here. Go to the home page and click the link manage users. And you can see we have the users listing page appears with the column headers here. We need to use some CSS classes for the table here. For the table, we need to use the class table and table border refresh, and you can see we have border table here, and we need to make the dark background for the table heading. So for the T head tag here, we use the class is G head dark here, and you see it looks better, right? And then the next section, table body, for the real data of the user information, T body. And you can see in the handler method we send a list collection of user objects named list users here. So in the view we need to use Thymeleaf. We need to use Thymeleaf gh block with the expression gh:h to iterate to each user object in the list user like this. And for each user we write the code for a new table row like this, and the value for the first column is user ID, So we can use this expression user.id. User is the name of the variable in the each loop here, and id is a property name in the user entity class. User entity class here, id, email, first name, last name, password here. Now we can refresh user.id. Refresh again. We got an error. Let me see. Like this, you see. Okay, refresh, and you can see the value ID 1 here. Now we write code for other values. The next one is for user email, and the next one is for user dot first name, and the last one is for user last name, and the last column for the action hyperlinks. For now it is empty. Now refresh, and you can see we have the details information of the user Ravi Kumar here, ID, email, first name, last name, and we write two hyperlink for the actions, edit and delete. You see, edit and delete, and we put the hyperlink add new user after the heading here. A tag add new user with the class is heading 3, and for the edit hyperlink here we use a class is heading 4. Class heading 4, and margin right with the size is 3 here. Alright, refresh, and you can see it looks better, right? And we specify the URLs for the link add new user, edit and delete. The URL for the link add new user here, th:/sref equal to this expression /user/new, and the URL for the edit link here, th:/sref equal /user/edit/ and followed by the ID of the user. So here we plus user.id like this, and similar for the delete hyperlink here. Let's change the URL /user/delete and refresh. Sorry, my mistake here. Alright, you see now we have the link add new user, edit and delete here. We need to add some margin to the link here, margin 2. For the div section, sorry, class margin 2. Refresh, and you see it looks better, right? Now I will run the second the test method in the test class to insert another user into the database here, the test add new here. So run this test method again. Alright, successful, and refresh the user listing page, and you can see we see the second user Alex Stevenson appears here. Next, you will learn how to code the add user function with the add new user form looking like this. So on this form, we can enter the details such as email, first name, last name, and password in text fields. And for the enable status, it is a checkbox, check or uncheck. And when the save button is clicked, it will proceed the details into the database and display the successful message on the user's listing page like this. You see, user has been saved successfully. And if the cancel button is clicked, return to the user listing page. So we need to update the user controller class by implementing the show new form handler method that will show the new user form. And then we code the handler method save user and also implement the save method in the user service class. So come back to the project and let's update the user controller class here for the second handler method. Get mapping annotation for handling HTTP GET request with this URL /users /new, which is a URL of the link managed, of the link add new user in the user listing page. Here you see /users /new public string show new form. And here we return the logical view name is user underscore form. And we need to access the model object of Spring MVC model. And we put a new user object onto the model like this. Model attribute with the name is user and a new user object. And then we need to create this HTML file with the name user underscore form in the template directory here. A new HTML file here. Enter. Okay, and change the page title to add new user and copy some code from the index HTML here for the Thymeleaf namespace here, and for the Bootstrap link here, and for the container div here. Okay, and change the heading of the page to use heading 2, add new user. Now let's start the application. Refresh the application here. Refresh and click the link add new user here, and you can see the heading of the new user form appears here. Now let's write the code to display the form like this with the text fields email, first name, last name, password, and a checkbox is for enable status, and 2 buttons save and cancel here. Okay, so we put the heading into a new div section, and then we code the form element for the form, and here we specify the action of the form, th:\action like this, /user /save, and the method is for HTTP post request. And inside the form we create a new div section with the class is border, and then the first row is for the text field email. So here we use the class is and here we need to use the class form root and row for a row in a form, and then the label is email, and for the label we need to use the class is column sm4 for the relative width of the column is 4, and it will be responsive on a small screen. And also we need to use the class call form label for label. And then the next description is for the field. For this description we need to use the class is column sm at is a relative width of the column. And then we have the first text fields. So we use the input tag, input type equal email. In HTML file, we can use an input of type email to accept email from the user. And here we specify the th field with this syntax to refer to the field in the entity object. Here in the form tag, we need to use the th object, and the object name is user. The object name user here is the object user we set in the handler method here. And here for the th field, we need to specify the email. Email is the field in the user entity class. Here you see email here. Alright, now and then we need to use the class form control for the input. And now we can refresh the add new user form, and you can see we have the label email and the text field here. And we need to update the UI so to make it looks better. So we need to make the form smaller using the style like this. Max width is about 500 pixels and margin 0 auto to center the form. Now refresh, and you can see. And we also need to specify border color for this deep section, border secondary, and rounded corner, and padding 3. Alright, refresh, and you can see it looks better, right? We have the text field email here, and we should remove the class text center here, and specify the class text center in this heading text center. And we code the second row, second field of the form, which is for first name. So change the label to first name, and the field name here is first name, and the input type is text. Now refresh, and you can see we have the second field, first name here. So we do the similar for the next field, which is for last name. Copy, paste, and modify. Change the label to last name and change the field mapping here to last name. Alright, refresh, and you see. And the next field is for the password. So here we change the label to password and change the field name here to password, and change the input type to password. Okay, and the last field is for the enable status, which is a checkbox enabled here. And here we use input type checkbox th field map to the property to the field name enabled in the entity class enabled here. Refresh, and you can see we got an error. Enable in the user entity class. So we need to update the user entity class, adding a new field, private boolean enabled, and generate the getter and setter for this new field enabled here. Reflect encapsulate fields enabled here. Refactor. Okay. Just clear the console here. Now let's check in the database to see if the new column added. Refresh all here, and you can see the new column enabled, added, updated to the table here. You can see the SQL statement onto the table users add column enable here. Alright, and then we can refresh the new form here. You see the field enable status is checkbox here, and then we need to have two buttons, save and cancel. Div class for center the button, type equals submit with the caption is save, and for this button we need to use the Bootstrap class is btn for button, btn primary for the blue color of the button. Now refresh and you can see the save button here, and the second button is for cancel button, type equal button here with the class is btn and btn secondary caption cancel. You see we have the cancel button here, and we need to put the margin for the button, margin 2. Alright, you see it looks good, right? And then we need to specify some HTML attributes for form field validation. The field email is required, so we can specify the attribute require, and we can also specify the minimum length and maximum length of the field. For example, min length is 8 characters, and maximum length is the maximum length of the field email in the entity class here, 45 for first name and last name as well. And password, the maximum length for password is 15. So here should be 45. And for the field first name, we also specify the required attribute min length is 2 characters, and max length is 45 characters, and apply the same attributes for last name here. And for password, the minimum length is 5 characters and maximum length is 15 characters. Now we can test the form field validation. Refresh, click the save button right now, and you can see the error message, please fill out this field. This is because of the required attribute here. Now I enter just a single letter, click save, and you see I got another error message indicating that this field should be an email address. Here you see, click save, you see. So I must enter an email address like this, Mike Gates, and click save, and you see now it goes to the second field. The first name field is required, so I must enter first name Mike. save, and I must enter last name Gates, and I must enter a password. I just type 2 letters, and you can see it say that the minimum length of the password should be 5 characters. Okay, and click the save button. So the form validation has passed, and it calls the URL /user/save here, but we haven't invented any handler method for this URL yet. Click cancel, and nothing happens for the cancel button. So we can write some JavaScript code for the cancel button to return to the user listing page here. So we write some JavaScript code here before the closing body tag here. Script type equal JavaScript here. Text JavaScript. And we code a very simple function. Cancel form. And in the on-click event of this cancel button, on click, we call the function cancel form here. And in the function form, we set the URL of the browser's window.location to the URL of the user's listing page, and we should use Thymeleaf expression like this /users. And now refresh the click the add new user form. We got error. My mistake. And refresh. Okay, view page source, and you can see the JavaScript code generated here with the URL for the window.location is /users. And click the cancel button, and you can see it goes back to the user's listing page. And next, we need to implement the handler method save user in the user controller class and the save business method in the user service class for positioning a new user object into the database. Okay, so update the user controller class here. We need to code a new handler method for handling the submission of the user form here. You see. For this URL, which is the action of the user form here. We need to use the post mapping annotation with the URL mapping like this: public string save user. And in this handler method, we just simply declare the argument user object here, and Spring Framework and Thymeleaf engine, we create an user object by reading the form fields in the user form here, because we use the th :object attribute here. Makes sense? And then here simply call service save and passing the user object. And then in the user service class, we need to implement this business method. So click here to create the method. And here in the user service class, we simply call repo.save the user object. Very simple, right? And in the handler method, we need to return a redirection to the user's listing page like this /users. And now we can test the add a new user function. Here, click add new user. We got an error. Let's see. Now refresh. Okay, enter the details: email, Mike Gates, mic gets mic enable true and click save. And you see the new user mic got inserted here, and it gets display in the user's listing page here. And we can check in the database here, users table, refresh, and you see we have the new row for the new user mic gets here, you see. And I will show you how to update the user's listing page to show the successful message after a new user has been saved successfully, like this. So come back to the project, and we update the user's listing page, user's HTML here, and under the heading here we code another div section, and this div section is only generated if and only if there's a variable with the name message. So here we can use the syntax th colon if message is not null. And in the handler method here, in the save user method here, we need to use the direct attributes here. And here, after positing the user object into the database, we need to add a flash attribute with the name is message and the value is a successful message. The user has been saved successfully. And then we update the code here. For this div section, we need to use the class is alert success for the green color, and center the text, and then we display the message here. Okay, now we can test adding another new user. Add new user Tina Zamerson, and enable true. Click save. And you see, now we see the successful message. The user has been saved successfully, and the new user Tina Zamerson appears here. Perfect, right? And we can verify in the users table here. You see new row for the user Tina Zamerson here. Next, you will learn how to code the edit update user function. So on the user's listing page, we can click the edit link next to user to edit and update that user. And the edit user form appears like this, displays the details of the user, email, first name, last name, and enable status. Note that password is not displayed. And click the save button. We update the details into the database and display the successful message like this, similar to the add new user function. So in Java code, we need to update the user service class element, the get method here, that we return a user object by ID. And in the controller layer, we need to code the handler method show edit form. And for updating the user details, we can reuse the code of the handler method save user. And then we need to update the user form and user listing page accordingly. Now we need to update the user service class here. Code a new business method that will return a user object by ID, get an integer ID. And here we call the method repo file by ID here, passing the parameter is ID. And this method returns an optional of type user here. So we need to check if the user is present or not. If result is not present, then we return result get, else we throw a new exception, throw new user not found exception, and we code the new exception class, create class user not found exception in the same package, and we need to add throws declaration for the method like this, and the error message is could not find any users with ID. And so we need to update the exception class here, refactor, generate constructor here. We need to generate constructor that takes message here. Okay, and then we code the handler method in the controller, user controller here, for handling the request to edit user from the user listing page here. You can see here we have the, for each user we have the link edit here, and you can see the link edit here, edit, and you can see slash user slash edit slash and followed by the user ID. So we need to code the corresponding handler method here, get mapping with the URL is slash user slash edit, and then we use a special syntax for the ID value of the user here, ID, and the handler method public string show edit form. And in the method argument we can use the annotation path variable here with the name is ID to bind the value in the path here to parameter of the method integer ID and model object model, and here we call service get passing the value of ID, and we need to catch the exception, so which I catch here, and in case user not found exception we direct to the user listing page with an error message, else if the user is found we set this user object onto the model add attribute user is the name and user is the object value, and in case of exception we add direction like this. So we also need to use direct attribute object here you see. Okay, and in the user form we need to update the heading and the page title accordingly. So for the page title here I parameterize using the Thymeleaf expression like this, page title, and the same for the heading of the page here, and we need to send the page title in the handler method in the controller here, handler method in show new user form model add attribute page title add new user for this handler method, and in case of editing user the page title is edit user, and ID of the user being edited is value of the method argument ID here, you see. All right, makes sense. And now we can test editing a user a user here. users. We got error, missing return statement. Sorry, in the handler method show edit form, we need to return the logical view name user underscore form in case user is found with the given ID. Okay, and refresh again, and click to edit the user Ravi Kumar with ID 1 here. Click edit, and you can see the edit user form appears with the heading edit user ID, and the details, email, first name and last name got displayed here, except the password. Cancel, and try to edit the user migrates. Here you see the enable status is true. You see we also need to update the listing page to show the column enable status. Okay, users here. Add the column for enable status here. Enabled here. Enabled here. Okay, refresh, and you can see the new column enabled here. And now the code for updating the a user is the same as adding a new user. As you can see, we use the same action for the user form here, and we need to add a hidden field type equal hidden. This field map to the field ID of the user entity class ID like this, so we can update the user details. Now try to edit this user Ravi Kumar, view the page source, and you can see in the generated code the value for the hidden field ID here in edit mode, and in new mode here, view page source, and you can see the value of the ID field is empty. And now we update the user Alex Stevenson here. Click edit and change enable status to true. For the password, we must retype the password, and I change the email Alex Stevenson UK, something like that, and click the save button. And you see we got the successful message, user has been saved successfully, and the user Alex Stevenson got updated email enable status to true here. We can verify in the users table here, Alex Stevenson here. Now refresh, and you can see it got updated. Perfect, right? Let me update another user, Tina Jameson here. Password, and change the enable status. Update the first name, Tina J. Click save. You see Tina J Jameson false here. Refresh, you can see. And lastly, I will show you how to code the delete user function. So on the user's listing page, we can click the delete link next to user to delete that user from the database, and the successful message gets displayed like this. The user ID 4 has been deleted. And in Java code, we need to implement the delete method in the user service class, and implement the handler method delete user in the controller class. Okay, come back to the IDE, to IntelliJ IDEA here, and we update the user service class here. Implement the delete method, public void delete by ID, integer ID. And here we simply call repo delete by ID. But you know, there will be a case that no user filed by the given ID. So it's better to check if is there any user ID with this given ID first before calling the delete by ID method. So instead of calling the file by ID method here, which returns a user object, so we can use another method in the user repository interface here. User repository, we can declare a custom method here, public long count by ID, and parameter is user ID. And you see, we just declare the method signature, and Spring Data JPA is able to understand and generate the corresponding SQL statement because this method name is by convention count by and then the field name ID. Okay, so in the service class here, we can check count by ID first, repo count by ID, and it returns a long value count. And before calling the delete by ID method here, we should check the count value here. If count is null or count equal to 0, then we throw a new exception. Could not find any users with the given ID here, and add throws clause for the method. Okay, and then in the controller layer, we implement the handler method for deleting a user. In the user's listing page, we have the link delete here, link delete here, and you can see the URL is /delete/for, which is the ID number of the user. So we can code the same as the similar to the handler method for editing a new editing an existing user here, and change the URL mapping here is to delete. Change the method here to delete user. We don't need to use the model object, and here we call service delete passing the user ID, and in case of user not found exception is thrown here, then we redirect the user to the listing page with this error message. The error message should be the message of the exception, get message exception E, get message here, E get message, and here in this handler method we redirect to the user listing page in both cases. Alright, makes sense. And now we can test the delete user function. Go to the user listing page here, and I will delete the user Mike gets here with ID 4. Click delete. And you see we don't see the successful message. We need to add a successful message here. Add flash attribute message. The user ID has been deleted. We can check in the users table here, and you can see the user ID for my guest was removed. Here you see that means the delete user function is working properly. Now let's test deleting another user. For example, user Tina Jamison here, delete, and you can see the message, the user ID 5 has been deleted. Somehow I type the URL like this, delete 10, and we got the error, could not find any users with ID 10. Right? So that you have learned using IntelliJ IDEA for developing a Spring Boot web application with user module. Implement the CRUD operations such as create, retrieve, update, and delete. I hope you will find this video helpful. Please subscribe to my channel and then like, comment, and share this video. Thank you.